Have you ever watched a movie where the hero's vehicle seems to defy all laws of physics, engineering, and common sense? Well, buckle up, because we're about to dive into one of the most gloriously ridiculous movie trucks ever put on film. Chuck Norris's 1983 action flick Lone Wolf McQuade featured a Dodge Ramcharger that could apparently do everything short of time travel. And the more you learn about this mechanical movie star, the more you realize Hollywood took some serious creative liberties. Today we're counting down 20 weird facts about McQuade's supposedly 1981 Dodge Ramcharger that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about this cult classic vehicle. So grab a beer, pour it on your face if you want the full McQuade experience, and let's dive into this automotive insanity. Number 20. The movie can't even agree on what year the truck is. So right off the bat, we've got a problem. The movie keeps calling McQuade's ride a 1981 Ramcharger, but multiple sources, including the Internet Movie Cars database, suggest it's actually an 83 model. This isn't just a minor detail either. The body styling between these years had noticeable differences that any Dodge enthusiast would spot immediately. It's like the filmmakers just picked a year that sounded good and rolled with it. The confusion gets even worse when you realize that different promotional materials for the film list different years. Some press releases said 81, some said 82, and the actual vehicles used appear to be 83 models. This kind of inconsistency might seem trivial, but for a movie that made such a big deal about this specific truck, you'd think they'd at least get the model year straight. The real kicker? Chuck Norris himself has given different answers in interviews over the years about what year the truck was supposed to be. In one interview from 1985, he called it an 82. In another from the 90s, he went with 81. Even the movie's own star couldn't keep the story straight. And here's where it gets really weird. The vehicle registration props used in the film apparently show different years depending on which scene you're watching. Eagle-eyed viewers have spotted at least 3 different registration stickers throughout the movie. It's almost like they were actively trying to confuse people. This whole year confusion has actually sparked decades of debate among car enthusiasts and movie buffs, with entire forum threads dedicated to figuring out the exact model year. Some fans have gone so far as to analyze the grille patterns, taillight designs, and dashboard configurations frame by frame. The consensus? Nobody really knows for sure, and at this point the mystery has become part of the truck's legend. Number 19. They used at least 5 different Ramchargers during filming. Here's something that'll blow your mind. That one. Iconic Ramcharger. You see McQuade driving throughout the movie? It's actually at least 5 different trucks. The Internet Movie Cars database confirms this, and when you know what to look for, you can spot the differences throughout the film. This is pretty standard for action movies, but the extent to which these trucks differ is kind of hilarious. One has a sunroof, another doesn't. One has yellow fog lights, another has clear ones. Some have different wheel designs. It's like they rated every Dodge dealership in Texas and said close enough. The production team apparently had different trucks for different purposes. There was the hero truck for close-ups and dialogue scenes, which was kept in pristine condition. Then there were the stunt trucks, which took all the abuse. One was specifically set up for the burial scene, another for the jump sequences, and at least one was kept as a backup. What makes this even more interesting is that each truck was modified differently. The stunt coordinator has said in interviews that they had to balance making the trucks look identical on camera while also setting them up for their specific stunts. The burial truck, for instance, had a completely different suspension setup than the jumping truck. And get this, the trucks weren't even all the same color originally. The prop department had to repaint at least 2 of them to match the hero vehicle. If you look closely at some scenes, you can actually see slight variations in the paint shade, especially in direct sunlight. The continuity errors this created are legendary among film nerds. There's one scene where McQuade gets out of a Ramcharger with a sunroof, walks around the front, and gets back into one without a sunroof. It happens in a single take. How did nobody notice this during editing? Or maybe they did notice and just figured nobody would care. This was 1983 after all, before the internet made it easy for obsessive fans to catalog every tiny mistake. Number 18. That sunroof was never a factory option. Speaking of sunroofs, here's a fact that drives Dodge purists absolutely crazy. One of the main Ramchargers used in the film has a clear sunroof, which looks pretty cool in those overhead shots. Problem is, Dodge never offered a factory sunroof option on the Ramcharger. Ever. Not in 81, not in 83, not in any year of production. This was a complete custom job done specifically for the movie. The sunroof was apparently Chuck Norris's idea. He wanted more natural light for certain interior shots and thought it would look cool during action sequences. The modification was done by a custom shop in Dallas, and according to people who worked on the film, it was a nightmare to install. They had to reinforce the entire roof structure because cutting that big hole weakened the body integrity. The funny thing is, this non-existent factory option has confused Ramcharger enthusiasts for decades. There are still people on classic car forums asking where they can find an original sunroof model like the one in the movie. Dealers have stories about customers coming in during the 80s asking to order a Ramcharger with the McQuade sunroof package. It didn't exist, but that didn't stop people from wanting it. The sunroof also created some practical problems during filming. It leaked during rain scenes, which weren't even in the script but happened because of unexpected weather. The seal around the sunroof would sometimes pop open during stunt sequences, requiring multiple takes. And the glass actually cracked during one particularly aggressive jump, though you can't see it in the final film. What's really ironic is that Dodge did offer removable tops on earlier Ramchargers, just not in the model years used in the movie. So they went through all this trouble to add a sunroof to a vehicle that could have had a removable top if they just used a different year model. Hollywood logic at its finest. Number 17. The burial scene defies basic physics. The famous scene where a McQuade's Ramcharger gets buried by a bulldozer and then drives out? Yeah, that's not how physics works. At all. Film goofs documented on IMDb point out that the direction the truck faces when buried doesn't match how it drives out. But that's just the beginning of the problems with this scene. Let's talk about what really happens when you bury a vehicle under several tons of dirt. First, the weight would crush the roof, even with the reinforced structure of a Ramcharger. Second, the dirt would get into everything. The engine, the air intake, the exhaust. There's no way that engine would start, let alone run with enough power to drive out. The movie shows McQuade inside the buried truck, somehow still having enough air to breathe, drink a beer, and pour it on his face. In reality, he'd have maybe a few minutes of oxygen before passing out. The dirt would create an airtight seal around the vehicle, but movie magic says he's got plenty of time for his weird beer ritual. And then there's the escape itself. The film shows the Ramcharger powering straight up through the dirt pile like it's driving through foam packing peanuts. Real dirt doesn't work that way. It's heavy, it's compressed, and it wouldn't just part like the Red Sea because Chuck Norris hit the Supercharger button. Stunt coordinators have since admitted they used a combination of lightweight materials mixed with real dirt for the burial. The truck was actually on a hidden ramp system that helped guide it up and out. They also had to do multiple takes because the first few times the truck got stuck halfway out. None of this made it into the behind-the-scenes features, of course. The best part? The Supercharger that supposedly gives McQuade the power to escape wouldn't actually help in this situation. If anything, it would just suck more dirt into the engine and kill it faster. But hey, this is a movie where Chuck Norris defeats David Carradine in a bulldozer fight, so realistic physics wasn't exactly a priority. Number 16. The Supercharger setup is pure Hollywood fantasy. Let's talk about that Supercharger because according to the Internet Movie Cars database, one of the Ramchargers supposedly has a big block 440 engine with a supercharger blower. Fans have speculated it's clutch activated, meaning it can be engaged on demand. This is peak movie supercharger technology, which is to say, it's complete nonsense. Real superchargers don't work like nitrous buttons in Fast and Furious movies. They're belt-driven and run constantly when the engine is running. You can't just flip a switch and suddenly have extra power. But in McQuade's world, that supercharger is basically a magic button that solves all problems. Buried alive? Hit the supercharger. Need to jump a ravine? Supercharger time. The way the movie presents it, the supercharger adds something like 300 horsepower instantly. That's not how forced induction works. Even if you could clutch activate a supercharger, which you can't without destroying your engine, the power delivery would be so violent it would likely break something. The transmission, the differential, something would give. The sound effects for the supercharger are hilariously over the top too. It makes this whining, screaming noise like a jet engine spooling up. Real superchargers don't sound like that. They make a consistent whine that changes with engine speed. The movie version sounds like someone recorded a dentist drill and played it through a Marshall amplifier. Here's what really happened. The Supercharger was mostly just a non-functional prop bolted to the hood for looks. For the sound, they mixed together various mechanical noises in post-production. The actual performance of the trucks during stunts came from good old-fashioned V8 power and careful stunt driving. No magic buttons required. The funny thing is, this fictional supercharger setup has inspired countless replica builds. People have spent thousands of dollars trying to recreate something that never actually existed. There are entire forum threads dedicated to figuring out how to make a clutch-activated supercharger work. Spoiler alert, you can't. At least not in any practical way. Number 15, the Siren makes no sense whatsoever. The Ramcharger's Siren setup is bizarre even by movie standards. Reports indicate it uses a Whelen power pack, which creates this weird charging and recharging sound that no real emergency vehicle has ever made. It's like they wanted a Siren, but also wanted it to sound futuristic and intimidating, so they just made something up. The visual setup is equally strange. There's a mix of red, blue, and white beacon lights on top, giving it what fans describe as a Mad Max cop wagon vibe. This combination wouldn't be legal for any actual law enforcement vehicle in Texas or anywhere else in the United States. Different, states have specific requirements for emergency vehicle lighting, and this random rainbow of beacons doesn't meet any of them. The placement of the lights is also weird. They're mounted on what looks like a custom light bar that sits way too high on the roof. This would create massive wind resistance and probably fly off at highway speeds. But in the movie, McQuade tears around at presumably high speeds with no problems. The Siren control system shown in the movie is hilarious too. There's this massive panel of switches and buttons that looks like it belongs in a fighter jet, not a police truck. Real emergency vehicles in the 80s had maybe 2 or 3 switches for lights and siren. McQuade's setup looks like he could launch nuclear missiles with it. What's really funny is that the siren sounds different depending on which truck they're using in the scene. The continuity department apparently didn't think to make sure all 5 trucks had the same siren sound. So sometimes it's high pitch, sometimes it's lower, sometimes it warbles, sometimes it doesn't. And here's the best part. In several scenes, you can hear the siren, but the lights aren't on. Or vice versa. It's like the sound and visual effects departments weren't talking to each other. For a movie that made such a big deal about this being a specially equipped law enforcement vehicle, they sure didn't pay much attention to the details. Number 14. McQuade's 5.2. Engine reference makes no sense in the movie. McQuade refers to My 5.2, which would indicate a 5.2 liter engine, basically a 318 cubic inch motor. This is weird for multiple reasons. First, if you're going to have a supercharged monster truck that can drive out of graves and jump ravines, why would you put one of the smallest V8 engines available in it? The 318 was a decent engine, but it wasn't exactly a powerhouse. But here's where it gets confusing. The Internet Movie Cars database says at least one truck had a 440 big block, which is 7.2 liters, not 5.2. So either McQuade doesn't know what engine is in his own truck, or the scriptwriters just picked random numbers that sounded good. The 318 versus 440 debate has raged in Ramcharger forums for decades. Some fans insist you can hear the difference in the engine sound. Others point to the massive supercharger and say there's no way that's sitting on a small block. The truth is, with 5 different trucks, they probably had different engines in different vehicles. What makes this even funnier is that McQuade is supposed to be this hardcore Texas Ranger who loves his truck more than anything. You'd think he'd know what engine it has, but apparently not. Maybe the beer to the face ritual affected his memory. The 5.2 reference might have been an attempt at accuracy, though. The 318 was actually the standard engine in many Ramchargers of that era. But if you're going to add a fictional supercharger and claim it can perform impossible feats, why stop at accuracy with the engine displacement? It's like putting realistic tires on a flying car. There's also the possibility that 5.2 was code for something else entirely in the script. Maybe it was police code, maybe it was CB radio slang, maybe Chuck Norris just made it up on the spot. We'll never know for sure. But it's become another part of the movie's confusing technical legacy. Number 13. The removable top historical inaccuracy. Real 1981. Ramchargers had welded-in steel roofs with no removable top option, while earlier models did have removable tops. So if the movie wanted a removable top feature, they picked the wrong year to claim the truck was from. This is according to multiple sources, including Motor Trend, and it's the kind of detail that drives Dodge historians crazy. The removable top was actually a big selling point for early Ramchargers. It competed directly with the Chevy Blazer's removable top. But by 1981, Dodge had moved to a fixed roof design for structural integrity and noise reduction. The movie, however, seems to exist in an alternate universe where 1981 models could have whatever features the plot demanded. This isn't just a minor detail either. The structural difference between removable and fixed-top Ramchargers was significant. The fixed-top models had better rollover protection and were generally safer. The removable top models were more fun, but also more dangerous. By putting impossible features on a supposedly 81 model, the movie created expectations that no real Ramcharger could meet. The confusion this caused at Dodge dealerships was apparently significant. Salespeople reported customers coming in asking for the McQuade model with the removable top option that didn't exist for that year. Some dealers allegedly tried to convince customers to buy older models with removable tops, leading to some interesting sales pitches about how the older ones were actually better. What's ironic is that if the filmmakers had just been honest about using an 83 model, or better yet, used an actual older model with a removable top, they could have avoided this whole issue. But that would have required someone on the production team to actually research Ramcharger specifications. Clearly, that wasn't a priority. The removable top confusion persists to this day. Classic car listings often incorrectly state that 81 Ramchargers had removable tops, usually adding, like in Lone Wolf McQuade, as justification. The movie literally rewrote Ramcharger history in people's minds, creating features that never existed. Number 12. The Vacuum-Actuator 4-wheel drive system. Was notoriously unreliable according to period owner guides cited by Motor Trend. The vacuum-actuator mechanisms used in some 4-wheel drive systems were notoriously unreliable. This is particularly relevant because McQuade's Ramcharger seems to have a flawlessly functioning 4-wheel drive system that never fails, even after being buried alive. In reality, these systems were incredibly finicky. The vacuum-actuated system was supposed to be an improvement over manual locking hubs. The idea was you could engage 4-wheel drive from inside the cab without getting out in bad weather. Great in theory, nightmare in practice. The vacuum lines would crack, the actuators would fail, and suddenly you'd have no 4-wheel drive at all. Ramcharger owners from that era have horror stories about these systems. They'd work fine for a few months, then fail at the worst possible moment, like when you're stuck in mud or snow, or trying to escape from being buried alive, though that probably wasn't a common complaint at the dealership. The movie shows McQuade engaging 4-wheel drive with a simple switch flip, and it works perfectly every time. No hesitation, no grinding, no vacuum leaks. It's like they existed in an alternate universe where Chrysler quality control was actually good in the early 80s. Mechanics who worked on these vehicles say the vacuum systems were often the first thing to get replaced with manual hubs. The conversion was so common that aftermarket companies made specific kits for it. But in movie land, McQuade's vacuum system works better than any real system ever did. The irony is that all the stunts in the movie probably would have destroyed a real vacuum-actuated system within the first day of filming. Those systems couldn't handle normal off-road use, let alone Hollywood stunt abuse. The stunt trucks likely had completely different 4-wheel drive setups, probably manual or even fully locked differentials for maximum traction during stunts. Number 11. The muddy, yet perfectly running engine defies logic. According to scenes and stills from the movie, McQuade's Ramcharger is constantly covered in mud and beat into hell, yet it runs like a dream every single time. This completely ignores how delicate and temperamental these old trucks actually were. Anyone who's owned a 70s or 80s truck knows they required constant maintenance just to run normally. The movie shows the Ramcharger going through water crossings that would hydro-lock any real engine. It gets caked in mud that would clog every air filter and radiator fin. It takes impacts that would misalign the frame and destroy the suspension. But turn the key, and it starts right up every time. No hesitation, no rough idle, no warning lights. Real Ramchargers from this era had their share of issues. Carburetor problems were common, especially in dusty or muddy conditions. The ignition systems didn't like moisture. The cooling systems were adequate for normal driving, but would overheat under extreme conditions. Yet McQuade's truck seems immune to all of these real-world problems. There's one scene where the truck is literally steaming from being pushed so hard, covered in mud and dust, and probably hasn't had an oil change in years based on how McQuade treats it. Next scene, purrs like a kitten. It's like the truck has Wolverine's healing factor. The electrical systems in these trucks were particularly vulnerable. Water and mud would cause shorts, corroded connections, and failed components. But McQuade's truck has power windows, power locks, and every electrical accessory working perfectly, despite being basically submarine tested in several scenes. The suspension components shown taking massive impacts would be destroyed in reality. Ball joints, tie rods, shocks, springs, everything would be bent or broken after the stunts shown in the movie. But the next scene shows the truck driving perfectly straight with no alignment issues. It's movie magic at its most obvious. Mechanics have calculated that the abuse shown in the movie would require a complete rebuild of the truck at least 3 times over. But in the film, it seems to run on pure Chuck Norris energy, never needing more than maybe a dramatic wipe down between scenes. Number 10. Multiple engine specifications across different trucks. Because multiple Ramchargers were used during filming, the engine specs probably varied significantly from truck to truck. According to the Internet Movie Cars database and fan speculation, some had 318s, some had 360s, and maybe even bigger engines. This creates a funny situation where McQuade's truck has different performance capabilities depending on which scene you're watching. The 318 cubic inch engine was the base V8 option and produced around 130 horsepower in stock form. The 360 was the middle option with about 170 horses. The 440 big block, if any trucks actually had it, would be pushing 250 horsepower or more. These are significant differences that would completely change how the truck performs. You can actually notice this in the film if you pay attention. Some scenes show the truck accelerating quickly and sounding aggressive. Other scenes, probably with the 318 truck, show more leisurely acceleration and a quieter exhaust note. It's like McQuade's truck has multiple personality disorder. The transmission options would have varied too. Some trucks might have had 3-speed automatics, others 4 speeds, maybe even a manual transmission for certain stunts. Each combination would handle differently, sound different, and perform differently. But the movie treats them all as the same magical super truck. Fuel economy would have ranged from terrible to absolutely horrendous depending on the engine. The 318 might get 12 miles per gallon on a good day. The 440, you'd measure that in gallons per mile. Yet McQuade seems to drive forever without ever stopping for gas. Must be another supercharger feature. The cooling requirements for these different engines would have been vastly different too. A 440 in Texas heat would need a massive radiator and probably auxiliary coolers. A 318 could get by with stock cooling. Yet all the trucks in the movie seem equally capable of handling extreme conditions without overheating. This mix of specifications has led to decades of arguments about what the real McQuade Ramcharger specs were. The answer is there was no single specification. It was whatever truck happened to be available for that particular scene. Number 9, a cop wagon. That was never a cop wagon. The movie Ramcharger is styled like a law enforcement vehicle, but most Ramchargers were civilian SUVs, not typical cop wagons. This is an important distinction because the movie treats it like it's some kind of standard issue Texas Ranger vehicle. In reality, law enforcement agencies rarely used Ramchargers for patrol duties. They were too expensive, too fuel inefficient, and frankly, too unreliable for police work. Police departments in the 80s preferred sedan-based vehicles for patrol work. The Dodge Diplomat, Plymouth Grand Fury, and Chevrolet Caprice were the real cop cars of that era. SUVs were sometimes used for special units or rural areas, but a Ramcharger would have been an unusual choice. The Texas Rangers in particular typically used sedans or pickup trucks, not full-size SUVs. The equipment shown in McQuade's Ramcharger is also wrong for actual law enforcement use. Real police vehicles had standardized equipment installed by certified upfitters. They had specific radio systems, light packages, and safety equipment that met state requirements. McQuade's truck looks like someone went to an automotive accessories store and bought one of everything from the emergency vehicle aisle. The interior setup is particularly ridiculous. There's no cage separating the front and back, no proper radio mount, no standard police equipment storage. It's basically a civilian Ramcharger with some lights slapped on top and a siren that makes spaceship noises. Real police vehicles are purposefully modified for officer safety and equipment accessibility. This isn't just movie nitpicking either. The film created this image of Texas Rangers driving around in super modified Ramchargers that never existed. People still think this was actually a thing. There are forum posts asking where to find surplus Texas Ranger Ramchargers from the 80s. They don't exist because they never existed. The closest thing to reality would have been some rural sheriff departments that might have had a Ramcharger for specific purposes like search and rescue or off-road pursuits. But even then, they wouldn't have been modified like McQuade's truck. They would have had basic emergency lights and maybe a push bar. That's it. Number 8, the beer ritual. That makes no sense. The scene where McQuade opens a beer inside the buried truck and pours it on his face is weird enough on its own, but according to Wikipedia and fan discussions, this is apparently his way of preparing to engage the Supercharger and escape. It's presented as some kind of mystical ritual that gives him the strength or clarity to perform the impossible. Let's think about this for a second. You're buried alive, oxygen is limited, and your solution is to waste precious energy opening a beer and pouring it on yourself. This is peak action movie logic, where being cool is more important than being alive. The beer isn't even cold. It's been sitting in his truck in Texas heat, then buried under tons of dirt. That's going to be one warm foam exploded mess of a beer. But McQuade pours it on his face like it's a refreshing mountain stream. The symbolism is supposedly that he's recharging himself like his supercharged engine. Get it? It's like a metaphor or something. Except it's a really stupid metaphor that involves wasting beer and valuable oxygen while you're suffocating. Some fans have tried to rationalize this scene. Maybe the alcohol gives him courage, maybe the cold liquid keeps him alert, maybe it's a psychological trigger that helps him focus. But really, it's just Chuck Norris doing something weird because it looked cool in the script. The scene has become so iconic that people actually recreate it. There are YouTube videos of people pouring beer on their faces before attempting difficult tasks. It's become a meme, which is probably not what the filmmakers intended. They wanted badass, they got bizarre. What makes it even funnier is that this is presented as something McQuade regularly does. Like, this is his standard operating procedure for tough situations. Bad guys surrounding you, beer face. About to fight David Carradine, beer face. Buried alive, definitely, beer face time. It's his solution to everything. Number 7, the escape velocity problem. According to fans and physics enthusiasts, after McQuade's beer facial, he absolutely floors the throttle, hits the supercharger, and drives straight out of his grave. This is presented as a triumphant moment of human determination and machine power. In reality, it's a complete violation of several laws of physics, and the acceleration needed would probably kill everyone inside. Let's do some rough math here. The truck is buried under what appears to be at least 6 feet of dirt. To burst through that in the dramatic fashion shown, the Ramcharger would need to accelerate from 0 to probably 30 miles per hour in the space of about 10 feet. That's a G-force that would slam everyone into their seats hard enough to cause serious injury. The traction problem alone makes this impossible. The tires would just spin in place against the dirt. Even with 4-wheel drive, even with a magical supercharger, you're not getting the grip needed to accelerate that quickly in loose dirt. The tires would dig themselves deeper, not propel the truck upward. Then there's the structural integrity issue. The force needed to burst through that much dirt would likely rip the body off the frame. These trucks weren't built for that kind of stress. The roof would collapse, the windows would shatter, the doors would probably blow off. But in the movie, the truck emerges basically intact. The trajectory shown is also impossible. The truck comes out at an angle that suggests it somehow turned while underground. Dirt doesn't work that way. You can't steer through solid material. Yet McQuade emerges at the perfect angle to land dramatically and drive away. The engine survival is the biggest miracle. After being buried, somehow starting despite no air intake, then being pushed hard enough to escape, any real engine would be completely destroyed. Rod knock, blown head gaskets, cracked block, pick your catastrophic failure. But McQuade's engine keeps running perfectly. The landing after the escape would have destroyed the suspension, probably broken McQuade's back, and definitely caused frame damage that would make the truck undrivable. But next scene, driving along like nothing happened. Movie physics are amazing. Number 6, the mysterious MSRP discrepancy. Despite the 1981 label in fan lore and the movie's presentation of this as some kind of super truck, the actual MSRP for a real 1981 Ramcharger was under $10,000. According to Automart USA, it ranged from $8,688 to $9,941. That's less than a well-equipped sedan costs today, adjusted for inflation. This creates a funny situation where McQuade's supposedly special law enforcement vehicle would have been one of the cheaper truck options available. For context, a loaded Chevy Suburban from the same era could cost significantly more. Yet the movie treats this thing like it's some kind of exotic super machine that only a legendary Texas Ranger could handle. The base price got you a pretty basic truck too. Manual transmission, manual windows, manual locks, AM radio if you were lucky. To get power options and air conditioning, you were looking at the higher end of that price range. McQuade's truck, with all its fictional equipment, would have cost a fortune in accessories alone. The aftermarket modifications shown in the movie would have easily doubled the truck's value. That Supercharger setup, even if it worked like the movie claims, would be thousands of dollars. The custom light bar and siren system, more thousands. The magical berry-proof ceiling, priceless, because it doesn't exist. What's funny is that people have tried to build McQuade replica trucks and discovered it costs way more than buying an actual vintage Ramcharger. A decent condition 81 to 83 Ramcharger now costs anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000. Add movie-accurate modifications, and you're looking at $50,000 or more for a tribute build. The movie also implies this is McQuade's personal vehicle that he uses for work, on a Texas Ranger. Salary in the 80s, even a base model Ramcharger would have been a significant purchase. Add in the fuel costs of daily driving a big V8 in Texas, and McQuade must have been independently wealthy or deeply in debt. The economic reality versus the movie presentation shows Hollywood's typical disconnect from real-world finances. They needed a tough-looking truck and didn't care that their hero supposedly bought and maintained something completely impractical on a government salary. Number 5, the multiple Ramcharger visibility errors. The use of 5 different trucks created some hilarious continuity errors that are visible throughout the film. These aren't subtle mistakes either. We're talking about completely different vehicles appearing in the same scene, sometimes in the same shot. It's like the editors just gave up trying to match them. The most obvious is the sunroof situation. There's literally a scene where McQuade gets out of a truck with a sunroof, walks maybe 10 feet, and gets back into a truck without one. It happens in what's supposed to be one continuous sequence. How did nobody in post-production notice this? Or maybe they did and just didn't care because fixing it would mean reshooting. The fog lights change color between yellow and clear depending on which truck they're using. Sometimes they're on, sometimes they're off, sometimes they don't exist at all. There's one chase scene where the fog lights change 3 times in about 30 seconds of screen time. It's like watching a vehicular mood ring. The wheels and tires are different too. Some trucks have chrome wheels, others have painted steel wheels. The tire sizes vary, which actually affects how the truck sits and handles. In some shots, the Ramcharger looks lifted, in others, it's stock height. McQuade's truck apparently has adjustable suspension that changes based on camera angle. The damage continuity is even worse. The truck gets beat up in one scene, showing specific dents and scratches, then appears pristine in the next shot. Then, different damage appears. It's like the truck has selective healing abilities, fixing some problems while developing new ones spontaneously. Interior shots reveal different dashboards, different steering wheels, even different seat materials. One truck has a wood grain dash, another has black plastic. The seats go from cloth to vinyl and back to cloth. McQuade must have the world's fastest interior detailing service. The best continuity error involves the Supercharger itself. In some shots, it's there, prominent on the hood. In others, taken from different angles or with different trucks, it's completely absent. Then, it magically reappears for the next action sequence. It's a quantum supercharger that exists only when observed directly. Number 4. The impossible Whelen Siren sound. The Whelen strobe power pack siren system reportedly used on the truck creates a sound that no actual emergency vehicle has ever made. According to the Internet Movie Cars database, this system makes a unique charging and recharging sound that seems designed more for alien invasions than law enforcement. It's like they wanted something that sounded futuristic and menacing rather than functional. Real Whelen sirens from that era had specific program tones for different situations. You had wail, yelp, and high-low patterns. What you didn't have was the weird electronic warbling that McQuade's truck produces. It sounds like someone put a synthesizer through a broken amplifier and recorded the result. The charging sound, in particular, makes no sense. It builds up like a capacitor charging, then releases in this electronic scream. Real sirens don't need to charge, they're either on or off. This Hollywood interpretation suggests the siren is somehow building up sonic energy before releasing it. That's not how sound works. The visual strobe system is equally ridiculous. The lights flash in patterns that would cause seizures in anyone watching. Real emergency vehicles use specific flash patterns that are visible but not disorienting. McQuade's lights look like a disco having a nervous breakdown. There are multiple colors, multiple speeds, and no apparent synchronization. What makes this even funnier is that different scenes have different siren sounds, probably because they couldn't consistently recreate their made-up noise. Sometimes it's high-pitched, sometimes lower, sometimes it warbles, sometimes it's steady. The truck apparently has multiple personality disorder that extends to its Siren system. The controls shown for this system are absurd too. There's a panel with at least a dozen switches and buttons, none of which are labeled. McQuade somehow knows exactly which combination to hit for each situation. It's like playing a very dangerous musical instrument while driving. In one scene, the siren is clearly audible, but the lights aren't on. In another, the lights are going crazy, but there's no siren. The sound and visual effects departments apparently didn't coordinate their efforts. Or maybe the Whelen system just works on its own schedule, independent of what the driver wants. Number 3, the frame integrity magic. Throughout the movie, McQuade's Ramcharger takes impacts that would completely destroy the frame of any real truck, yet it keeps driving perfectly straight with no structural damage. We're talking about jumps that would bend the frame, crashes that would twist the chassis, and impacts that would turn any real vehicle into modern art. But McQuade's truck has apparently been built from adamantium. The jump scenes alone would destroy a real Ramcharger. These trucks had conventional ladder frames that were strong for their time, but not designed for Dukes of Hazzard-style aerobatics. Landing from even a modest jump would bend the frame, misalign everything, and probably crack several welds. The movie shows jumps that would require a complete rebuild afterward. The burial scene would have crushed the frame rails from the weight of the dirt. Even if the magical Supercharger could somehow provide escape velocity, the frame would be so compromised that the truck would fold in half once it emerged. But nope, it drives away straighter than it went in. There's a scene where the truck basically T-bones another vehicle at speed. This would push the front frame horns back, destroy the radiator support, and probably tweak the entire chassis. Next scene? The truck is maybe a little dusty but structurally perfect. It's like the frame repairs itself between takes. The side impacts shown would be even worse. Ramchargers had minimal side impact protection. A serious side hit would push the frame out of square, making the truck crab walk down the road if it could move at all. McQuade's truck takes multiple side hits and drives away like nothing happened. The suspension mounting points would fail long before the frame itself. These are high-stress areas that take massive forces during stunts. The shock towers would crack, the spring hangers would bend, the control arm mounts would tear out. But McQuade's suspension mounts are apparently welded by the gods themselves. The best part is when the truck goes through water crossings that would hydro-lock the engine and potentially crack the frame from thermal shock. Hot frame rails hitting cold water can cause stress fractures. But McQuade's frame is apparently immune to the laws of thermodynamics too. Number 2, the removable parts that aren't removable. The film shows various parts of the Ramcharger being removed or modified in ways that aren't actually possible with the real vehicle. Doors come off and go back on like they're held by magnets. Body panels apparently unbolt themselves for convenient camera angles. The roof structure seems to change configuration based on scene requirements. It's like the truck was built from Lego blocks. The rear window, which was fixed glass in real Ramchargers of that era, sometimes appears to be missing entirely for interior shots. Then it's back for exterior shots. Then it's gone again. This isn't damage from stunts, it's just convenient disappearing for better camera angles. The whole window just phases in and out of existence. The hood, despite having a massive supercharger supposedly bolted through it, comes off and goes back on between scenes like it weighs nothing. In reality, that hood would need multiple people to remove and would require disconnecting various supercharger components. But in the movie, it's apparently held on by wishes and hope. The doors are the best part. There are scenes where the doors are clearly removed for filming, allowing better camera access to the interior, but they forgot to explain why McQuade would be driving around without doors. So in some shots, the doors are there. Cut to a different angle, no doors. Cut back, doors are magically back. The fenders take damage that would require complete replacement, then appear perfect in the next scene. Not repaired, not hammered out, just factory fresh. It's like the truck has a reset button that returns it to showroom condition between action sequences. The bumpers deserve special mention. They get ripped off, bent, twisted, and generally abused, yet they keep reappearing in perfect condition. The front bumper, in particular, seems to have regenerative properties. It takes impacts that would turn it into abstract art, then returns to its original shape. Even the interior panels seem to remove themselves for convenience. The door panels disappear and reappear. The dash pad changes from damaged to perfect. The headliner goes from sagging to tight. It's automotive magic that would make David Copperfield jealous. Number 1. The engine that defies all logic. The number one weirdest fact about McQuade's Ramcharger is that the engine apparently runs on pure impossibility. Throughout the film, this engine survives conditions that would destroy any real motor in seconds. It runs without air while buried, operates underwater, survives impacts that would crack the block, and never seems to need basic maintenance like oil, coolant, or even gasoline. This isn't just movie convenience, it's a complete rejection of how internal combustion engines work. The burial scene alone presents multiple impossibilities. When buried, the engine would have no air intake for combustion, the exhaust would be blocked, creating back pressure that would stall the engine immediately. The dirt would clog every opening, filter, and breather. Yet when McQuade turns the key, it fires right up like it's been sitting in a climate-controlled garage. The water crossing scenes are equally ridiculous. The truck drives through water deep enough to submerge the engine. Water would get sucked into the intake, hydrolock the cylinders, and bend the connecting rods into pretzels. The electrical system would short out. The exhaust would fill with water. But McQuade drives through like it's a puddle. The engine makes different sounds depending on which truck they're using and which audio track they dubbed in. Sometimes it sounds like a small block, sometimes like a big block, sometimes like a diesel, and occasionally like a jet engine. It's the vocal impressionist of engines, able to mimic any sound the scene requires. The temperature management is impossible too. The engine operates in Texas heat, gets buried in insulating dirt, drives through cooling water, and never shows realistic temperature behavior. No overheating, no vapor lock, no cooling system failures. The temperature gauge, when visible, always shows perfect operating temperature. The maintenance situation is the best part. We never see McQuade change the oil, check the fluids, or perform any maintenance. After the abuse this engine takes, it would need a complete rebuild every few days, but it keeps running perfectly, suggesting it's self-maintaining or possibly powered by Chuck Norris's beard. The fuel consumption alone would be astronomical. A supercharged big block doing the stunts shown would get maybe 4 miles per gallon. The burial escape would probably burn through 5 gallons just breaking free, yet we never see McQuade stop for gas. The truck apparently has either an infinite fuel tank or runs on determination. The real kicker? After all this abuse, the engine never loses power, no compression loss, no valve problems, no bearing failures. It maintains full power from the first scene to the last, defying everything we know about mechanical wear and tear. This engine doesn't follow the laws of physics, thermodynamics, or basic mechanical principles. It's the ultimate movie engine, powered by pure script convenience and Chuck Norris magic. And there you have it, that's 20 weird facts about McQuade's supposedly 1981 Dodge Ramcharger that prove Hollywood didn't let little things like physics, logic, or mechanical reality get in the way of a good action scene. The truck that became a cult classic was actually 5 different trucks with impossible features, defying every law of nature while Chuck Norris poured beer on his face and drove out of graves. Did any of these facts surprise you? Or do you have your own favorite impossible moment from the movie? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more breakdowns of Hollywood's most ridiculous vehicles, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because if Lone Wolf McQuade taught us anything, it's that reality is optional when you've got a supercharger and a bad attitude. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time when we dive into another gloriously impossible piece of movie machinery.